Hey everybody, welcome to the Ron Line Report. Today's special guest I've known for a very long time, but I don't think I've ever actually had a solid sit-down interview with this man. Interviewed his son last year.
I was going to say, had Dom on there, but yeah, I don't know if we have.
So please welcome the original coach, the most famous coach of all time, in my opinion, Chad Nicholls. Chad.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I have to start with the fact that I haven't heard a thing about you in a long time, in a couple of years, and I heard rumors that you were going through some health issues. And, you know, I didn't want to pry. It's I've always known you're kind of a private person,
right?
You don't put much out there. So, can you tell people, because a lot of people have been asking? I've seen it. What's going on with Chad Nicholls? So what's been going on?
So it's kind of crazy. The last 3 to 4 years have been a roller coaster, to say the least. So I got bit here in Missouri. We have brown recluse spiders, like they're nasty, and I got bit by one, and I didn't really think too much about it. I got bit on my abdomen, and but what ended up happening was I got that taken care of. But a month later, I ended up with basically these little spots all over me, and what had happened was the poison had turned to MRSA and had kind of spread through my abdomen, ate like 21 holes through my abdomen. And so during that same time, I was training pretty heavy at the time, and I had kind of a back injury. Didn't think anything about it. I was going to the chiropractor. He was doing acupuncture and all this kind of stuff on it. And we bought a Theragun and thinking like this would help. But what had ended up happening was actually the MRSA had built a encapsulated rind on T1, 2, and 3 of my spine and had been there for over a year. So it had basically eaten away the spine, basically osteomyelitis. So it just eroded my spine completely away. And so right now I have basically like just open, they kind of open firing. So it's like just tremendous pain. So basically what happened was we used the Theragun, blew it into my body, and I ended up septic. And then for about the last, 3 years, I went septic 3 more times. So 4 times total, being septic, very close to death. The first 2 times were probably the scariest. And because I was really, really close to, I had a collapsed lung. I had, basically kidney failure, liver failure, basically everything.
Oh my God.
I had 5 different spots on my body that needed to be drained. They ended up draining, I think, 12 pounds of infection out of my body, in the back of my head and all this stuff. Kind of go forward, we were still kind of like, and I had been on antibiotics for so long, it was unbelievable. I had taken them in bursts of like 6 months at a time. I had a PICC line in, so I would have to go and have the antibiotics and stuff. And so it would, every once in a while, it would just kind of come around. Well, at the beginning, or at the end of, I guess, last year, I started kind of having some, not feeling so good. Went to the Olympia. I didn't feel that good there. And then in January, me and my wife was getting ready to go out and eat on a Saturday night. And basically laid down. I had a really bad headache. And I thought, no, I'm just going to get rid of this headache and we'll go grab something to eat. And basically the next thing I knew, I woke up with paramedics everywhere around my bed, and I had a massive stroke. And basically, we kind of, I was lucky. We caught it really quick, fast enough where they got me to the hospital and gave me the, what is it, TNK or whatever, the stuff they give you to basically, the clot burst or buster or whatever. And it responded really well. Was able to get through that. I didn't have any paralysis, memory loss, nothing. I have a tiny, tiny little spot on my right eye that's like a little vision issue. But other than that, I was pretty lucky. The only, kind of really side effect from the like clot buster, whatever they gave me, I ended up with a brain bleed from that. So I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks with that. And it was one of those things where I'm not one of those people that are like, put that out there, like, prayer chain, oh my God, pray for me, all of this kind of stuff. we're just kind of a private, private people. It was one of those things where I decided like I'm just going to kind of, do my thing. And it was crazy that when I got out of the hospital, I still had athletes that I was working with, and so I somehow, like the week after I got out, I had an athlete doing the Arnold Amateur, and somehow was able to get through that, and he ended up winning the amateur overall. So
wow.
I was pretty lucky. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. But then just kind of really focused on, I had to realize that it was something I'd never dealt with before because it was a brain issue. And so kind of when I'd not really researched that a lot, kind of, so I've been, basically just kind of resting and sleeping and taking as much time off as I possibly can. And yeah, it's been a little bit scary. But I was lucky, like I said, like I didn't lose any, like memory loss. I had nothing, no speech, no paralysis, nothing, drooping in the face, nothing. Yeah, so I was pretty lucky about it. So,
jeez, this whole time I was like, I think Chad just got sick of coaching. That's why we don't hear about him anymore. Wow. Well, thank you for enlightening us, man. I'm so happy you got through that with no serious long-term repercussions. Because
I mean, it's really scary when you start kind of digging into the things that could happen, because it would have been easy for me to go blind and all of these kind of things. It's scary as shit. Like, I mean, it's just, because it was something that that was kind of misdiagnosed, because I had PTSD from the going septic, which I thought was really kind of weird. And I couldn't wrap my head around that. But I guess it's something that happens when you go that close to death. And stuff from sepsis, and they kind of diagnosed it with that. But what ended up being was I was having like severe AFib, and so I had been in AFib for almost a year and had developed a kind of a clot in the heart that just on that Saturday night broke loose. And luckily, again, like I said, Kim was there. I honestly wanted to just sleep. I was kind of like, I'm just going to go back and sleep. And but Dom, who works in law enforcement, he called a friend of his who was a paramedic who works on the ambulance, and literally she started this way, got Kim on the phone, started asking me questions, and I was just kind of in and out of it. Like I said, I woke up with a bunch of people around me, and the rest is kind of history. But I was it kind of opens your eyes to how fast shit can happen. That's for damn sure.
Jeez. And all from a spider bite.
From a spider bite is what the original thing happened, and then it settled on my heart. So I had what they call a fuzzy valve, or like vegetation of the valve, and I had that for almost a year. So I'll take antibiotics forever. So I kind of like living with MRSA. So my body colonizes it. I mean, everybody kind of does, but I can get like the slightest little thing and go septic. So I'm basically on antibiotics every single day, and I will be the infection guy thanks forever. Yeah.
I'm going to go, and when we're done, I'm going to look up pictures of brown recluse spiders.
Oh, dude, they're nasty. Yeah, they're fucking nasty. Pardon my language. I had a spot like the size of, like a pop bottle that basically just eroded, and basically just the skin dies, and they have to cut all of that out. And
I've seen that.
Nasty. Yeah, I look like I was hit by a shotgun or something.
Wow. Yeah, and I didn't know Dominic followed in your footsteps because you're a former police officer.
Cop for 5 years, and he had to, because he just turned 21, so he's at the jail right now, and then he will more than likely go to the sheriff's office if that's where he decides to go. We may be moving, though. I mean, we may have a move like in the near future. So my son's a senior right now. He is just now starting to, so we're leaving this week, going to Eastern Illinois for a visit. So depending on where he decides to go to school, I mean, he's going to have numerous options, but right now he's kind of focused on Eastern. So we'll see. And so we could very easily maybe end up back where we're originally from in Illinois or something.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I know some of the viewers aren't going to be as familiar with you because there's a lot of youngsters watching. So let's back up to the 90s when coaching, that was the dawn of coaching. I remember the first quote unquote coach I ever knew was Chris Aceto, because I used to work for a guy named Lou Zwick. I think you knew Lou.
Yeah, I knew Lou.
And he would hook up Aceto with certain guys that needed help. Like a young kid named Jay Cutler when he was 18. He introduced him to Chris, and rest is history. But we never had coaches in bodybuilding. Later in the decade, I started hearing your name pop up because I was working with Flex Wheeler a lot. He was on our show quite a few times, and I know you became his coach and then Ronnie's coach after that. But how did you transition? Were you originally just coaching your wife Kim at the time?
So it was one of those things where it kind of transitioned really kind of rapidly. So I started out as a bodybuilder, kind of like everybody else, but I knew where my limit was. I knew what my, genetic potential was. Her genetic potential was endless. And so I knew that we had to learn a lot, and so that's what I kind of dove into and was a lot more intrigued by that. I was a terrible dieter, hated dieting, but it was one of those things where I just wanted to find out like all of the aspects of what the body could do. And that's kind of where I really thrived. That was the part that really interested me from a very, young age, I guess. And so that's where I kind of really started. And obviously it was with Kim, and then Kim's conditioning was always spot on. So it was kind of one of those things where, Flex I'd helped Flex. Before him, I had helped actually Nasser in 97, and then Paul Dillette that year as well. Okay. And of course, 97, Nasser got a lot of notoriety because it was so close between him and Dorian that year. And so it was kind of one of those things. Then I ended up with Flex. Flex then hooked me up with Ronnie. And it was at that point, I was still a cop. And I was kind of like, I think this is something that at the time, nobody was making a lot of money. Like they weren't really monetizing it. And so I saw the potential to take something and, relieve a lot of pressure off the athlete about things that they didn't really have to worry about, and, really kind of capitalize and make a business out of it. And I remember going to, my lieutenant and telling him like, hey, listen, I'm going to take a year's leave of absence. I'm going to try this, becoming a professional coach to athletes and, professional athletes, And he's like, does that pay well? It sounds great. I go, well, I don't know if it pays anything right now, but I think it's got the potential to down the road. And he's like, what are you thinking of? And so I took the risk, and it paid off, and hopefully paved the way for a lot of people to make money in this industry.
Oh, are you kidding me, Chad? I mean, you talk about paving the way. Everyone and their grandma. I see kids online with the broccoli hair and zits all over their face that are coaches. Exactly. So, they're still in high school. Some of these. I want to back up just a second because you changed women's bodybuilding with your wife Kim, with her 4 Olympia titles. She changed the standards for the sport, especially when it came to conditioning. She basically made Linda Murray retire. I mean, Linda came back later, but
yeah, I actually trained her. I trained her for the comeback.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, she was kind of one of those things where if you can't beat him, you join him, and we ended up.
That's awesome.
With her,
because she's from Michigan.
Yeah, she's from Michigan, but we kind of came into the sport at the same time. She was a little bit before us, but with Kim, it was one of those things where I learned so much because I was with her all the time. And I could tell, basically everything she did. I mean, I knew like if she ate a little something that she wasn't supposed to, I could look at the body and tell instantaneous. And so I learned so much from that. But, with women's bodybuilding, I had like a specific look and something that we were trying to achieve because, I wanted her to be super lean, and that's what she wanted to be. But we didn't want this like gnarly, like look to the skin and everything. We wanted more, still a woman's skin, but with like super, super intricate detail and stuff like that. And, it's funny because she carried a lot of muscle, and most people thought she was like massively big, but she never really weighed much. I mean, she won the international, I think at 147. And then through her 4 years, I think her last one, she weighed 160 maybe.
Wow. And she's 5'8", I think.
5'8". Yeah, 5'8". Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to ask you this, and here's my chance finally. So many women bodybuilders, the ruined is a strong word, but they've lost their femininity. They've lost their hair, their voices change. They become very, very androgynous looking. And, you know, I would have expected that fate to befall Kim, because she totally changed the sport. She was bigger, more lean, everything. But here we are all these years later. She looks perfectly feminine. She has a squeaky, girly voice. How did you avoid? You don't have to get into details with compounds or anything, but were you always super conscious of avoiding any long-term damage that would have that befell so many other female bodybuilders?
So we were 100% always on top of that. That we always knew that there was going to be life after bodybuilding. So we never went in with the risk it all type of mentality. We knew that there was going to be life after bodybuilding. We knew that there was going to be a point where we were going to want a family. We kind of wanted to get all of our stuff out of the way first, and then be able to enjoy. Because I mean, it's tough, bodybuilding and traveling and doing all these things. We just didn't really feel like we could enjoy the family life and be able to do all of those things while doing that. And so we kind of got that out of the way. And then it came, kind of a happy surprise. But then she ended up, pregnant when she was actually prepping for the first year for figure for the Arnolds, when she ended up pregnant for that. And so that was kind of the end of the sport for us.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And into that. But back to your question, we were always like from day one, we talked through things, and I was like, listen, like, we're not going to go down a road where we're going to take a chance on your voice ever. At any point, no matter, I don't care what the compound is. And we were very, very cautious. I don't care what it is. If something starts to sound raspy, if something starts to change, we're done with that. We're done. And if we can't get beyond that, then we're just done. Like, we're not going to risk ever going down that path. I've seen so many women do it. And there were certain things that we never touched. Like, there was just certain things that are involved nowadays as a base. And we literally never touched them. It was just, we knew that it would be catastrophic in the long run. It would change what she, because at the end of the day, she wanted to be feminine. She wanted to look like a normal person when she was done with this. She didn't want, telltale signs of stuff for the rest of her life, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing because, like I said, it had to be very. I give you all the credit because I've seen so many women that, I don't blame them, because a lot of them were just doing what their coach, who oftentimes was a husband or a boyfriend.
A lot of times that's what it is. It's a boyfriend, a husband that don't really have the knowledge, and they basically just cut certain amounts down from what they have access to or what's on hand. That's what they end up doing, thinking like, well, you're not doing as much. But it doesn't matter, because there's certain things that will just destroy a female, and it's, it is what it is. And you've got to like really know what, and I mean, Kim was lucky. I mean, she was a genetic freak. I mean, she competed in her first show before even working out. Like, she literally didn't even train. I had done a show. She decided, like, I'm going to do a show. She was an aerobics instructor, had not lifted a weight, and went in and trained. So, I mean, she was a very rare type of person, but at the same time, we never took any chances whatsoever. Like, at no point was I going to have her like speak and sound, deeper than me or something. It's just, it's such a shame. And now you see girls that are doing it that don't even look like it should be like that. And it is. I mean, when bikini girls are starting to have raspy voices and some of these things, it's pushed the line of everything too far,
Yeah, I was in a gym called Elevation in Miami, where there's tons of competitors, tons of influencers. I was there last winter, and I heard the voice. The voice immediately. I call it the gear voice when the women have it. They sound like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy with his voice changing. Yeah. And I look, because I'm expecting to see I heard two women with the voices. I turn around and they look like maybe figure. Certainly no more. They weren't bikini. I think they were like figure, but like, geez, they've already got that voice, and they trust me, they weren't that big.
No, and I think now, I mean, in society with where we're at right now, everybody wants everything super fast. And so they do a little tiny something and they get really good results from it. And the side effects are very minimal. And so they think like, I'm good, I'm golden. And they just jump head first. And, and then they start to see incredible, progress. And, there's a lot of, other contributing factors as far as like sex drive, and the boyfriend's like, oh shit, I love this. Let's push the hell out of it. Right.
Yeah.
It just keeps going and going and going. And until the boyfriend doesn't want to be involved anymore, and then pushes her to the side, and she's stuck like that. And it's a shame, it's completely crazy,
Yeah, because for those who don't know, the voice never goes back. There's
it's done.
Once it's changed, it's done.
There's a few, like you can have, there's some like transvestite, type of surgeries where they thin those vocal cords and stuff, but shaven and stuff, but it's still got that twangy, weird, raspy sound to it. It's gone forever. You'll never sound the same.
And let's change subjects to your most famous client, who you took to 8 Mr. Olympia victories. Here is his first win, Ronnie Coleman, in 1999 in New York City. So a lot of people will say, well, this guy's got the greatest genetics in the history of humanity, going back to biblical times to now. Anybody could have coached him, but this guy wasn't doing that well before he met you. He was just starting to win, lower level shows. And he said many times, without Chad, I never would have been Mr. Olympia. He had me change up my eating so much more food. Yep. Everything was different. So, you obviously found a diamond in the rough with this guy.
Oh, for sure.
What were the major adjustments that you had to make? What was he doing, quote unquote, wrong when you met him?
Honestly, the biggest thing was making sure everything was perfectly set for him. So food was a big issue for sure, because he was definitely under eating. Because he came from kind of an old school mentality of where you kind of stay, relatively lean all year round. And, you're training, each body part twice a week, and, those types of things. So we made a few, minor things. But the one thing that I found out really quick was that his work ethic was never going to be outdone. So it didn't matter what I said. If I said, I need you to do more cardio, I need you to do, more food, whatever, even if it took a little bit to get there, because even with the food, we had to gradually progress that. It took us, I don't even remember, about 5 or 6 months to get him to where, food wise, where he needed to be.
Yeah.
And, but the thing is, he never veered from that. I mean, you just knew that he was a working machine that was never going to, be outdone. And I mean, like when you put a challenge in front of him, like it was just game on. And I didn't need to make him train harder. I didn't need, honestly, looking back, I wish I'd have made him train less. But I never had to really do that, because he was, again, like just came from a different cloth. Like he just wanted to work. And it was just, work. I mean, we did a lot of traveling together. I mean, there was times we would get in at, 12:30, 1 o'clock at night, and he would already have it scheduled to go to the gym. Like he would have somebody have it already scheduled to open the gym up for him and stuff. Wow. Like he never missed a beat. And I mean, it was like that. He had somebody sit there that had his food already set up, that, the microwave there. Like it was all done. Like, I mean, it was all, taken care of, and he was, on point with everything all the time. And that was the thing about him. I mean, and I've said this many a times, like when you have an athlete like that, you have to outwork him, outdiet him, outthink him, that work ethic and that, mental toughness, that, just being able to mentally, just deal with things. I mean, nobody wants to eat like that nonstop. And then you're, at such, I mean, let's get real. He trained at Metroflex. Anybody that's ever been in there in the middle of summer realizes that, dude, you can't be a bitch and go in there and train. Like, I'm telling you, it will wipe grown men out. And he did it. Like, he was just able to do it. I remember when we went down there for his show, me and Flex walked in there and we were like, holy shit, how do you train in here? It was like 110 degrees in there. Yep. And these guys were just in there just cranking. And you just knew it was a different breed in him. And he just, he outworked himself. Like, I mean, he just was that type of mentality. He would just push and push and push and push. Like, unbelievable. we'll never see another one. That's for sure. It's, you know, I always look back and think like what an honor it was to be able to work with him, because he's like one in a million, like one in a million.
Yeah. And, you know, I believe he's 60 now, right?
He's close. Yeah. He's really
close. I mean, aside from all the physical issues with the joints and everything, he seems to be in perfect health, you know, considering was it you that got him into taking a full 3 months off training and gear and everything off every Olympia? Or was that?
Well, I mean, yes, it kind of was and not, but he was a guy that I was lucky with because he had trained for so long natural. And so he didn't mind that feeling. Like, you know, a lot of guys, they, you know, when they train a certain way on gear, and then when they go away from that, once they've trained to a certain point, you know, mentally, your mind, you know, you change, your body aches, you're not moving weight, it doesn't feel the same. That's a tough, you know, nut to crack. He had already trained like that for years. That was not any problem for him. So, you know, when we were done with stuff, we would take, you know, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 months off and just let the body rest completely clean. Yeah. Like when you know, not like TRT, you know, like basic stuff, clean. And the other thing he did was he got his blood run every 2 months. And I mean, it was to a T all the time. We had, you know, I mean, he has his complete history. And it was, you know, like clockwork. And I mean, I look back and, you know, everybody's like, well, look at him now. Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, health-wise, just as far as being, you know, is he beat up? Absolutely. He's beat up because nobody can train the way he trained and sustain that. I don't care who you are, how genetic you are. But the one thing he did that was very, very smart is that he kept himself healthy. He made sure that he stayed on top of those things. And then eventually, like I said, the body broke down and he ended up with some back issues and hip issues and some of those. And you know, obviously, you know, everything snowballed from that first, you know, surgery. But, you know, the fact that he's been able to keep himself healthy through this whole process is really what allowed him, I think, to survive all those surgeries. Because I look what he's went through, and I've talked to him many times, and I don't know if I could have survived it. Like, just, you know what I mean? Just going through the surgeries alone.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he's amazing in the fact that he still travels so much. He traveled for his company. My friend Giles Thomas over in UK has brought him over for tours. He's still running around like an 18-year-old at 60 or close to it, with, you know, he's on crutches and he's in a scooter and everything, but smile on his face, time to talk to every fan, take a picture. You know, I mean, he's a one in a million. Just not just the physical genetics, but he's just, you know, one of the greatest people of our generation in our sport.
That's what I've always said. And the thing about him is he just loves that stuff so much. That's what he wants to do. Because I remember when he first had the first, you know, beginning problems with the surgery and stuff, and I'm like, man, you need to find a hobby. Go fish. Go do something. Play video games. Do something. And he's like, man, he goes, if I did that, I wouldn't know what to do. He goes, I just roll over and be done. And, you know, and then I talked to him just not too long ago, a few months ago, and he's like, man, I'm traveling more now than I did when I was Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm making more money now than I was when I was Mr. Olympia. He goes, I'm nonstop traveling now. Yeah. I mean, Ronnie just loves that whole, you know, that whole aspect of it. That's what he loves. Yeah. And so more power to him, you know?
Yeah. Your Giles told me, he said a couple months ago when they were on tour, he says, I just had my best month ever. He goes, ever? He goes, ever. So, I mean, this guy's still on the grind. He's still out there. It's like I said, he's a machine. Let's move on to another one of your famous guys. So, no, that's still Ronnie. My bad. Ramy Mambu LSBA, Big Ramy, had been trying to win the Olympia for years and years. He'd already been a pro for, I think, 7 years by the time you started working with him. What was the difference? Because all of a sudden he starts working with Chad Nicholls and kaboom, he's got 2 Olympia titles. So what did you change with Ramy?
So here's the thing, you know, in all of these situations, it's basically question and answer. It's solving problems. And with Big Ramy, I had seen, you know, Ramy compete for years, and I had seen what I believed was the problem. and what he was doing wrong. And so when we, and it's crazy because when I got with him, when we started kind of doing things, because I was kind of expecting what I got, but I was also kind of expecting a situation where his body was very tricky, where it was, maybe it was a metabolism issue or a conditioning issue or something. But the truth is, his body is a hyper responder. And sometimes that can be great, but other times that can be a catastrophic nightmare for people. And that's really what was all it was. It was basically just solving a few problems. And there was a couple times when, right at the beginning at the Arnold, I kind of overcarbed him a little bit because he was very carb sensitive and stuff. But again, we used that. We got questions answered and basically was able to bring it together for the Olympia and win. And but again, he's got a tricky physique. There's no doubt. It can change in a matter of minutes. Like it can just go boom, and it's like a different person. And but I think that again, he is genetically just a like hyper responder type of person. Like you see him, and when you watch him train, it's almost like that muscle is so connected that it's painful. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like that connection, that muscle mind connection is so sensitive. And I think that's one of the reasons why he came onto the scene so fast. Because he didn't really need to figure everything out. He just needed to go in the gym and be consistent and work out. And his body just kind of came along and progressed at a rapid rate. Even when, like Dennis had him at first, and then I know he went to the Camel Crew and all this stuff, his body just kept moving forward. When I got to him, he had just a ridiculous amount of muscle. Again, it was basically fine tuning everything, making sure that we don't make the same mistakes over and over, correcting those types of things, and really, kind of bringing things together. And again, like his body is always that kind of forward motion. I think, realistically, the best look that we had together was the Arnold the last time we got ready. Not the 2 Olympia wins. I think the first Olympia win was good, but in my opinion, the Arnold, I think he still took 4th or 5th that year at the Arnold. Not the first Arnold, but the second one we did. I thought that was his best look because I think he was big, he was full, he was dry, he was lean. And overall, the conditioning was, like spot on there. And again, because we had kind of learned things with water manipulation, so we didn't really have to overdo that. We kept him very hydrated, through the whole, process, which made a big, big difference in his physique as far as being stable. So yeah, it was, but again, his physique is tricky.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up now because question though, he did drop down at the last time he competed at the Olympia from 1st to 5th, which is precipitous.
Yes.
But we didn't never know what exactly was going on with him, whether it was whether it was a nerve issue, because he did have some sort of a little bit of atrophy that seemed to have corrected quite a bit by the time you brought him into that Arnold.
Yes. So we definitely were dealing with some major issues through the tricep, we had the indentions in the quads, we had the lat issue. But a lot of that was basically scar tissue from, years of, just bodybuilding. And so we were dealing with some things and we were really having a lot of trouble, like just bringing detail and bringing fullness. We could get to a certain point the year that he lost the Olympia, we could get him to a certain point, but we couldn't maintain it because if we, as we would get to push a little bit of conditioning, then you could notice, the back start to really come up and you notice those lats being just paper thin and starting to like retract into the back and stuff. So there was a lot of issues that, had to be dealt with going into the Arnold. By the time we got to the Arnold, everything wasn't fixed, but we were at least starting to be a lot more aware of what was going on and, what needed to be done to kind of hide as much as we possibly could and showcase, certain things. And, I still think, I don't know where he's at right now. I've talked to him maybe, a couple times over the last, 6 to 8 months. And, he hasn't, really said if he's going to compete again or not. To me, I don't know if he has anything to prove. I wouldn't compete unless, the stem cells were 100%, fixed the problem of the lats and stuff. Then I think he's competitive still across the board. But it doesn't make any sense to really take away. And no matter what, he's going to be a 2-time Mr. Olympia forever. And he's going to go down as one of the freakiest bodybuilders to ever step on stage. And to me, it's just not worth it. I know a lot of guys taking that competitive drive out of him is tough and stuff, but he's such a big presence in Egypt and everything. He has so much stuff going for him over there. And he's one of the most humble, like genuinely good people too. That was probably one of the similarities to him and Ronnie, if anything, is just, how genuine both of them were. I mean, it's just, they loved, being Mr. Olympia. They loved being, in that and traveling and seeing their fans. And I mean, he was, I'd never seen any athlete so, I guess, aware and cautious of, letting the fans down. And I'm like, listen, man, these guys are behind you. You don't have to ever worry about that. These guys, I said, if you can't tell, they love you over there. And he's like, yeah, but I feel like I owe them so much. And I was like, I get it, I get it. But I mean, it's tough. That stress and everything, you wear that it takes a toll on you, man. And especially in this sport, I mean, it's such a, brutal sport, and it's always constantly progressing. You take a step back for a very short period of time, and to catch back up, it's tough.
Yeah, because I wonder if the money's getting better. The Arnold is boosted up to 500, Olympia 600. I hear rumors the Dubai show is going to do like $1 million in prize this year. Or I don't know how that breaks down, but I'm sure Ramy's not destitute or hurting for money. But could it possibly entice him to come back? You think? Because a lot of people really would love to see that guy come back, assuming he can still. Because he looked damn good at that last Arnold.
Yeah, I thought he looked phenomenal at the Arnold. And I think anything close to that, especially if the stem cells have had time to, even progress a little bit. He didn't have to be perfect, but even if he's progressed a little bit, especially through the back, I think he's still very, very competitive with the elite, maybe top 5 or whatever. Yeah. And that's not to say, he's going to win, because he would have to have improved. Yeah. But I think that he is a guy that could definitely, do that. And I agree. I think, the fans would love, to see him. And I think that, based off of what I saw, I mean, I don't think he's, pushing things right now. I think he's worried about, health and longevity right now. But again, I've seen his body respond, and it's like, if there was ever a hyper responder, it's him for sure.
Well, I assume if he wants to compete again, you'll be the first to know about it. So
I would think, I mean, he'll let me. I don't know if we'll work together or not, but I mean, I think that he would definitely, get my opinion, because I think, we have a, good enough friendship that, we've talked about a lot of stuff over the last, like I said, year or two. And a lot of it was about, what he should do. And I told him, I'm like, just, do what makes you happy. Like right now, you got nothing to prove. I said, the fans are always going to want to see you. I said, in some aspects. So as long as you're still involved, you're going to shows, you're out there. I said, that's the main thing. And I said, if something happens and your body starts clicking and everything, don't feel like what you did at your last couple of shows is going to set in stone what you're going to do at your next two. I said, you got to sometimes roll the dice. So we'll see what he does.
Okay. I want to ask you about coaching, because like I said, when you started doing it, it was a brand new thing. And now everyone's got a coach. And not only that, we're at the point now where when people fire a coach or change coaches, it's big news. That Matt Jensen thing a few weeks ago, that was the biggest news in our industry for about a week until Mike Van Wyck pushed little Jeff Nippard. Then people shifted their attention. But did you ever think it would get to the point where people would be speculating about who's Nick Walker going to work with next? And, he should work with so-and-so and so-and-so. And the coaches have become celebrities. Yeah. And a lot of the fans, they really pin their hopes on their favorite athlete working with a specific coach, because they think that's going to be their ticket to the Olympia or whatever.
I think, I mean, it's crazy when the whole Matt Jansen thing went down. I got blown up on that, right? Wanted to
Mm,
know what my opinion was.
yeah.
I didn't chime in on any of it because it's one of those things where I could feel for both sides. I think that, when you look at the overall scenario with Matt, I think Matt did a fantastic job with every one of those guys at some point.
Yeah.
That's not to say that everything is always going to work out.
Right.
And you're not ever going to make, because look, at the end of the day, those guys are working hard, but so is everybody else.
Yep.
And so eventually there's going to be some guys catch up. We've seen that in some young guys recently. I feel bad for Nick Walker, obviously missing the Olympia twice.
Yeah.
That was a shame. But again, was that the coach's fault? Not necessarily. I mean, it could have been, but I doubt it. I think that these guys are grown men. They're going to push the boundaries no matter what. If the coaches are telling them don't push the boundaries, I can tell you firsthand it ain't going to matter, because they're going to push it no matter what. That's just the way it is. I'm not saying any of his guys did that.
Right.
I'm just saying that's just the way it is. And, the sport has become such dependent and at an extreme level. And for me to say it's at an extreme level, it's at an extreme level.
Yeah.
And that's just where we've went. And I mean, I think, eventually it's going to have to be reeled back in. How we do that is tough, because, as you start to see the freakier and freakier bodybuilders, that's what sells. So, the promoters are making money, everybody's making money, but at the same time, at what expense? And so there's going to be a point where I think something will definitely, have to be done. The one thing that I think, which is my biggest issue, and I've had many talks with people at very high powers, which, I've basically got nothing out of. But my kids at a very young age, no matter what they wanted to do, it wouldn't have mattered if they wanted to bowl. If they wanted to compete in bowling, they had to pass a physical. It didn't matter what they did at every single level of grade school, middle school, high school. You can't do anything unless you have a physical.
That's right.
We are in the most dangerous sport in the world, and you don't even have to see a doctor to be involved in it. That's the only complaint I have. It's like, I think it would be very easy for them to say, listen, and you could put this in motion very easily, that at the beginning of the year, you've got to pass a test that says you're physically sustainable to do what it is you're going to do.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that is, if these guys are going to do multiple shows, again, then they've got to go back and reevaluate that. Can they then continue and do it? That's going to save a hell of a lot of lives down the road, because I can tell you. But now, is there the consequences that some of these guys wouldn't be able to continue and compete? 100%.
Yeah.
But, you can't really look at it like that. You got to look at it. Is it a, situation that is better for the overall sport? And in my opinion, it should be done, and it should have been done a long time ago.
Because, you've worked with athletes from all different areas, boxing, MMA, baseball, football, everything. In the fighting sports, don't they have to have a complete physical workup before every single fight?
Before every single fight, they've got to be cleared to be able to, fight and get a license. Yeah. So if they are not cleared, you don't get a license and you don't fight, And I mean, I'm not saying, it's bodybuilding is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a very simple thing to force somebody to go and get blood work and to, get a doctor to tell them that they are physically healthy enough to sustain whatever it is they're going to do to compete in this sport. And I think, especially at the pro level, when the things that these guys are doing is basically required. I mean, let's get real. At the pro level, I don't care what anybody says, it's a requirement. And so if the sport is out there like that, at least implement things that force people to do things, because there's always going to be people that think like, you know what, I just don't want to know about it. I'd rather not know about it. I'm just going to do my thing. And if shit happens, shit happens. That's always going to happen, but if you force the hand and you say, listen, if you're not going to do this, then you don't get to compete and you're not going to get paid, they'll go get cleared. They'll take responsibility. And if you have to force them to take responsibility, And that's, and I mean, most coaches that I know, they tell every single, athlete, go be test, go get me your blood work. Like, I don't even take on an athlete right now unless he can send me blood work, recent blood work.
Yeah.
And if they don't have it, they got to go get it. Like, that's just the way it is right now. And, I want them to at least get it done at least once every 6 months, preferably maybe once every 4 months, but definitely once every 6 months. And I always prefer it then. And then if they do a show, or if they do a couple shows, you got to at least, wait a month and then get it done directly after that too. So we know, are you, healthy enough and have had you enough time to crank back up. And I think it's, common sense that could, help everybody. But again, like you can't really blame, the athletes are the responsibility, and you can tell, people to do things, whether they do it or not. I mean, it's, they can find money for basically about everything except, little shit like this, that might be more important than anything.
I'm glad you said all this, Chad, because in the past, I won't say who, but you have been labeled or accused as someone who didn't care about the health of the athletes. Absolutely. You just cared about them winning, and you were blamed for health problems and this and that. And I'm glad you set the record straight on that, because you never, really defended yourself that well. I don't think.
Because people don't know me, and I'm not a person that really goes out there and talks about a lot of that shit. And I mean, it's it is what it is. But I think that the athletes have to take responsibility. They have to. And I mean, again, like I tell like every one of my athletes, like, listen, I can only recommend what I think is okay. At any point, if this doesn't seem right to you, and I tell everybody, if your coach is telling you something and you're kind of like, I don't know about this, like this just seems like not like a good idea, don't do it. Like, don't do it. Like, it's your choice. You don't have to do anything that a coach is going to say, this I think is what's going to get it done. They can say this is what they think is going to get it done, but that doesn't mean you have to do it, So
this is idle speculation, but would you say, true or false, most pros, top amateurs, but let's just stick to pros, use more than they need to out of,
100%,
because they're worried. The other guys,
100%. I can tell you, like, if it is, I mean, let's look at it like this. The syringe is 3 cc's. I don't care what you put on there. That thing's going to get filled up. I don't care what anybody says. It's going to get filled up. That's why you almost got to manipulate it to where they can't do it, like, because they will. And, I mean, if you look at today's sport, look at how much scar tissue we have. Like, I've never seen it at this level ever. Like, it is at such a rampant rate right now. And I know everybody's talking side enhancement, and I'm sure that the side enhancement is out there for sure. But I mean, you can kind of tell that. Like, you can tell when the biceps are all jimmied and, they're all piled up and everything. But a lot of this is just intricate detail missing. It's all basic scar tissue just covering the body because there's nowhere else to go. And I mean, to go to that level, that's a lot. That's a lot. And I mean, when I get, because a lot of times I'll want to know what the athlete's doing before I take them on. What have you been doing? And the things that they send me is beyond what I ever thought we would get to. Like, honestly, like, and again, like, that's coming from me. Like, I mean, to shock me, it takes a lot. And I mean, like, the last 2 years, it's really like went a direction that I never thought we would see.
Well, the most shocking direction to me, and I'm sure as a father yourself, is seeing this trend with the young kids, high school kids, not only taking a bunch of the most toxic, powerful anabolic agent we know of, Trenbolone, but bragging about it, putting it on TikTok, showing themselves injecting. Here's my trend transformation. I mean, to me, it's sickening. It to you, it must be even worse to see this happening.
It's crazy because, I mean, I've got 2 kids. They started training, both of them, when they were 8 years old. And, even Dom had a point where he wanted to go into bodybuilding, and he maybe still kind of does. but the sport even went to a point where he is, kind of not like, man, I mean, he's into law enforcement now. So, I mean, he didn't want to do anything even close to that. But I mean, it just turned him off a little bit of that, because he didn't understand just, what was out there, like how far, it was. And, when he started getting close to some of these guys, and they, started kind of telling him what was happening, and he started kind of seeing it firsthand.
Yeah.
He took a step back and was like, yeah, this is definitely, I don't know if I can do this. And he just enjoys training, and, wants to build, a physique, likes training heavy and stuff. And I mean, he's not a small guy by any means, but, but I mean, again, like it's crazy. Some of these, young guys, just pounding, and I mean, and trying to become famous, by doing it. And it's unbelievable, It's
that's interesting, because I didn't know where Dominic was at as far as his bodybuilding aspirations. And
I mean, I think he still enjoys it tremendously, but he was, once he got into the law enforcement, and then his hours kind of changed, and so we kind of backed off of things. Morgan's just finishing up with football, so we had YouTube going, and we've kind of backed off of that. Now we're going to start kind of going back into that a little bit more, mainly because, kind of journey of Morgan kind of going into a D1 athlete, which is nice because he'll be tested across the board. And so, which will be nice. And, but, it's one of those things where, Dom was working 12 hours a day, he's working third shift, so it was kind of really, really tough to kind of, get all of that in line, and with his eating and with his training and, everything. So he's just been kind of a little bit all over the place, and he's had a couple nightmare girlfriends. Oh shit.
Those are the best kind, aren't they?
I don't know, man.
Nah, not really. Wow. So that's interesting, because I haven't seen Dom in person since that incident at the was it the Arnold Olympia, where he got John's and that was like the big.
Yeah, that was a big talk that too. Yeah,
that was a big news story of the day at the Olympia. It was the Olympia, right? Or was it Arnold? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was the Arnold.
It was the Arnold. But man, I was like, really? This was our top news story of the day today. Yeah. But he defended you. That's a good boy. That's a good son right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was it was one of those things where, well, there was a couple things that triggered him a little bit, but I think it was things that was said after the fact. I mean, honestly, I had just planned on taking Sean out the back door and having a talk with him.
Yeah.
Being like, dude, enough of this bullshit. And then he decided not to go outside. And then, of course, Dom kind of got involved. And then, then he made a couple kind of comments. And I mean, Dom at the time was 20 years old or whatever. And, I mean, that's just, what it is. It is this type of thing.
I didn't want to harp on that thing. I just thought it was, I've never talked to you about it. I've talked to him about it. Because,
I mean, he thought it was kind of nonsense too. But again, he got tired of, seeing it and hearing it and everything. And it was just kind of one of those things where it just kind of all kind of took place, and it is what it is. And it seems to be kind of over with now, I hope. And, but who knows?
So look at the size. This was a couple of years ago we're looking at, and he's size-wise, he's next to Brett, Hunter. This is James Hollingshead. I'm not sure who that is, but geez, he's big.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty good. I mean, he's probably 275, 80 there.
Yeah,
and that's when he was like, like all like, I mean, hitting all his meals, like everything was, bodybuilding. Yeah. And now he's probably around. He's smaller than that now. He's probably 260 somewhere up there, 265. And the same with Morgan. Like Morgan just got through with football, so he finished track, and Morgan was about 250. But Morgan's never really been in a situation where he can get either big or lean or whatever because of the positions that he played. Because he played D tackle and running back.
Oh boy,
which is a weird combination.
Yeah.
But he couldn't get too big because of running and like all of this kind of stuff. So I think that now he will, primarily focus probably on throwing events and probably D-tackle. So,
Okay.
so it'll
Quite
be
the athletic family, because I know Kim was. Were you also a great athlete as a young guy?
I was so I was a motocross kid. So
Oh,
I
motocross. Oh boy.
BMX and motocross. Yeah. So yeah, I was like my big thing was like, Fox Racing. Everybody sees me with Fox Racing. I was like, why you got Fox Racing on? It's like, dude, I grew up with that. That's what I did. I raced, everything, motocross, BMX, enduro karts, like, whatever. And it's weird because I would have loved to got the kids, into that. They had no interest, like zero interest in it. Yeah.
How many broken bones, Chad?
I had two. Both.
Oh, that's it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I take that back. My collarbone, but my wrist. I busted both of my wrists at the same time coming down off of a cliff jump. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone I know who's done motocross has got like a dozen or a couple dozen broken bones in their past. So it sounds like you got off easy.
I was kind of one of those guys that, I loved the sport and I was all in, like just all in. But, I either won or crashed usually.
Yeah. My older brother did motocross for a while. He usually just crashed.
Yeah.
Crashed and got hurt. So, man, you've been so generous with your time, Chad. I'm so glad that you're okay after that harrowing ordeal you've been through, and you're still going through in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so much better though right now. I mean, every day I get a little bit better, a little more energy. The biggest issue I think was I was so tired. Like I'm literally just sleep and sleep and sleep. After the stroke, and there was times when I would feel super, like good, and be like, oh, I'm turning the corner here, and then the next day, I'm like out for like 2 days straight. But you prioritize a lot of things, and so we're gonna, we used to promote a lot of shows and stuff, things like that and stuff. We're not gonna do that anymore. I'm gonna focus mainly on just nutrition. I mean, I do a lot of like lifestyle stuff and transformation. I have a lot of people that are just doing stuff on social media, like that's what their stuff is. They want to transition and do things, so they have content for social media and stuff. And so I have a lot of people like that. Kim works for a company called Serotonin. So she's like their main health coach. It's based out of Florida, but they just opened some here. And so she's doing that. She loves it. I mean, she's like, does health coaching and nutrition and all of that kind of stuff. So it's good. But like I said, I mean, we're probably looking at moving. I just don't know where we're going to move to. It's, it depends on probably where Morgan goes to school. So it could be a near future, could be back, home to Illinois. But a few years ago, we were supposed to go to Vegas because Morgan had gotten accepted to play football at Bishop Gorman.
Wow.
I got sick and couldn't go. So Vegas might very well be where we end up. So it just really kind of depends.
Are you working with any pros right now, or are you sick?
I mean, I've got a couple guys, but I mean, mainly amateurs. I mean, I've got a couple pros. I've got a guy that's going to do the Arnold this year, and the guy that won the amateur, so he gets an automatic invite.
That's right.
And stuff. So we'll see. I mean, at the beginning of the year is usually when I set my schedule for athletes, and like I said, over the last probably 6 months, I have not taken on really anybody because I wanted to make sure that I was 100% confident where I was at. Because again, I didn't want to take on somebody that I couldn't give 100% to, or if I was going to have, some issues down the road and stuff. But now that, my neurologists and doctors have cleared me 100%. So, so we'll see where we decide to go.
So final question. I think it was about 20 years ago. You trained Mike Tyson for one of his fights. Was it like back in 2003?
Yeah, I trained him for the Clifford Etienne fight.
Okay. Which he won. But what's your reaction to him at 58 years old, stepping in the ring in a couple days against this young Jake Paul dude?
So I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it depends on if they actually come out and brawl. I think if Mike is conditioned enough to just continuously go nonstop for, let's say, 3 or 4 rounds, he's a beast. Like, there's no doubt. You got to see him in person to understand what he is. I mean, I could see him, making it a good fight. Yeah. However, I know Jake Paul takes a lot of shit. Dude, he's a legitimate fighter. I'm telling you, like, we've seen him fight. I know he's not like the textbook, pro fighter. But he's a relatively big guy. He's young. He's got decent boxing skill. So I don't know. I mean, I think it could be a good fight. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
obviously, I'm rooting for Mike because I think everybody wants to see Jake Paul lose, and I think that everybody likes Mike, and I think it's one of those things where they want to see him succeed, and so I think it's possible. I hope that's the direction it goes, and I will definitely be rooting for him. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm 55 years old. I'm Team Tyson all the way on this. I don't hate Jake Paul, but I would love to see him just get humbled by this old
that personality. You just kind of want to see an old guy take him out.
Dude, it's like one of those Rocky movies where Stallone's like 60 years old making it.
But I'll tell you what. I mean, you got to give him credit. Like, I mean, what he's done for boxing. I mean, Tyson's going to make. I think Tyson's guaranteed $20 million, and Jake's guaranteed $40 million. I mean, that's a hell of a payday for these guys. I mean, that's Tyson wasn't going to get that kind of money fighting anybody else. That's for damn sure.
I mean, realistically, you and I both grew up when boxing was the thing to watch, and it's not that way anymore. And UFC is totally overshadowed. I haven't seen this much excitement about a boxing match, a fight in I don't know how long, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, I mean, and I think that if Tyson wins, it opens the door for a lot of possibilities for some other guys, maybe down the road or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, Chad, thank you so much, man. It's been great catching up, and crazy story about the health issues, all starting off with a spider bite and a stroke. And my goodness gracious, you have been through the mill, Chad.
Dude, 4 years have been. I did not expect. I will say I did not expect it.
So thanks for clearing all that up, because you're one of those guys that just keeps to himself and doesn't put every little thing out there on social media. So now we know, guys. Now we know what's Chad been up to all this time. Now you know. Yeah. So that's
just it. Dairy Queen and just chilling out.
Well, I wish you continued better health as time moves on, and with your sons and Kim and everybody. You got a great family there. Respect the hell out of that too, because you've always been a very strong family man, and I have a very deep respect for that myself. So that's it, man. Thank you, Chad, so much. Thanks everybody for watching. Ron Line Report with this man, the one and only Chad Nicholls. We will see you